And this is where you feel the future is, in data communications?
Yes, that I feel is the way we shall go.
Are you going to participate in the experiments?
Yes, we are. We're experimenting now with the post office, and we're going to be involved for 2 years on this particular experiment.
Well, thanks very much indeed. Thank you.
You're watching BBC Two. In a moment, Gardener's World at Emmanuel College, Cambridge, and after the mid-evening news at 7:30, Heads and Tails. At 7:45, Westminster returns with an analysis of the composition of the new Parliament. At 8:10, Chronicle and the controversial new ways of dating historical buildings taught by Cecil Hewitt. At 9 o'clock, the Fivepenny Piece Show. At 9:30, Drama, Only Connect. Graham is researching Edward Carpenter, an early socialist.
So, if Carpenter's politics were unattractive, why did you want to meet him?
At 10:20, Bullseye, more champions of the dartboard locked in battle. Then at 10:50, International Golf, highlights of the day's play in the PGA Championship from St Andrews. At 11:50, Chinese Roulette. A husband and his mistress discover his wife and her lover using the same hideaway. At 1:20, the Fox Watch continues somewhere in Bristol. Programmes for Friday evening on 2. And for the first of those programmes, we join Peter Seabrook for Gardener's World.
Emmanuel College, Cambridge, was founded in 1584 in the reign of Queen Elizabeth. What a difference between the horse and carts and the quiet traffic then and the heavy lorries and cars and hurly-burly we have today and all those one-way systems through Cambridge. But I wonder, all those visitors who crowd in, it was Americans who brought me for the first time, and as we joined the tourists, we didn't realise what lie behind those magnificent buildings, the quiet quadrangles and the quite lovely gardens. You all know I'm no historian, and fortunately this evening I have with me George Seeley, who's head gardener at Emmanuel. How long have you been gardener, George?
33 years here.
So you begin to know a bit about the place.
A little bit, yes.
What about the pool behind us,
well,
first of all?
This is referred to in the past as a bath, and it's been here since 1612.
So that's one of the earliest, almost.
Oh, yes, yes. Now an ancient monument, of course.
Yeah. And what about the hedging then? My goodness, that looks a bit prickly. But
whoever put the hedges in at a later date must have loathed swimming, because they put berberis and a holly hedge went down the back of the pool.
Yeah, you've cut that hard back. Actually, when that makes new growth, it'll be as attractive next year as the specimen you have over in the shrub border, won't it?
Yes, but eventually we're going to replace it with the yew hedge behind, which we hope gets rid of the prickles.
A lot more comfortable.
Yes.
So now you're quite a plantsman, aren't you? I know when we were walking around before, you had a tremendous number of things I hadn't seen before. This lovely lime green plant, for example.
This is Smyrnium perfoliatum, which is very closely allied to the old Alexanders, the old herb, which was as you know...
No, don't take it for granted, you know. I mean, I'm here to learn tonight.
well, it was used as a vegetable in the past, in place of celery, of course.
Yeah. And is it a biennial then?
It's a biennial, yes, like most of that group.
And you leave it to self-seed?
And it seeds itself freely everywhere.
Yeah.
That perhaps is its biggest drawback. It can seed a bit too freely.
Yeah, I can see the flower arranging lady striking that. Does it stand in water all right, do you know?
Oh, excellent. Excellent plant. Yeah. And it's a very fine background, because these flower spikes tend to stand out and they make a nice background.
Be a nice combination in woodland with bluebells.
Oh, yes. So this is the thing I'd like to have done sometime, to plant a coppice with bluebells on this.
But what a magnificent tree there, talking about woodlands and coppice. That's such a beautiful, isn't it? Every knobble and twist is like a work of art, isn't it?
It is, and the bark itself. It sheds its bark, as you see, and gives this beautiful mottled effect.
Does the whole lot come off then? I mean, is the tree absolutely white?
Some years it almost, but this year it's not quite so much.
Oh, it's beautiful. The branches actually grow into one another. You can see the sort of calluses growing and
yes, it's
fixing
twisted
together.
like a heap of snakes.
Yeah.
It's interesting too with the, it's a tree that has the two sexes of the flowers separately.
Yes, I think actually I can see some pollen flying from the male flower,
yes,
and then the
female
females
flower.
with the seed pods. Now this is Platanus orientalis, isn't it?
That's right, yes.
It's a native of the Balkans. I think it occurs a lot in southern Europe and the Mediterranean. We don't see it too much in this country, do we?
No, we don't. There's one at Bickling Hall, which has been allowed to grow down to the ground like this one, where it's rooted and has formed a ring of trees around the centre trunk.
Are you going to let this one root then and grow up at the
No,
base?
we won't do that because we like to cut the long grass underneath in the autumn, so each year it gets moved.
Yeah.
This is
And is that the way to propagate it? I mean, I know with the ordinary London plane we can take hardwood cuttings. Can you take hardwood cuttings of this if it'll actually sort of layer and root itself?
You could do, but it's much easier to take seed. If you sow ripe seed in November, they come up like mustard and cress, 100%.
Do they?
Yes, just like that.
Well, are the people sort of collecting one or two seeds from this? Because this must be one of the finest trees in Cambridge, surely.
We've had several people, old members, have asked for this, which we've raised seedlings for, and we planted one the other side of the paddock there to replace a tree that's beginning to go.
So there's lots of
way up.
offspring of this
Oh,
one.
I'm sure there is. Yes.
Have we the history of it? I mean, how old is this particular tree?
There's no record of the tree being planted, but they were introduced in this country about 1630, 40.
So this one could be 400 years?
Well, going by a very rough average of an inch of growth a year, this is about 14.5 foot round the trunk. So you're coming up to about 200 years.
Oh, it's a magnificent
It's,
tree. What about the autumn? I mean, we see it nicely now in the spring with the
Well,
young
of course,
growth.
it has these very deeply cut leaves which turn multiple colours in the autumn.
So it's
Mainly
even
because-
more
really beautiful, yes, yes.
How big are the gardens altogether?
We stand on 10 acres. About 2 of these are buildings, of course, so you're saying 8-acre garden.
And the
We
many of
have
you?
a staff of 3, and unfortunately I have a very good backup staff. You know, my second gardener's a good chap.
All good keen gardens.
Very good, yes.
Well, we've brought another one. We've got Arthur Billett from Black's Farm. He's having a
Oh,
look at
very
your
nice
herbaceous
too,
border.
yes.
I'm back in my home county, and what a wonderful day it is too. And you know, there are subjects that do well out of the sun. And here behind me is a wisteria. This is Wisteria sinensis alba on a north-facing wall. And what a wonderful sight that will be in, say, a month's time. You know, that wisteria has been there probably for 150 years. It's a variety that got a first-class certificate way back in 1892. So it gives you some idea that it's a plant that's been with us a long time. And of course the white form is not so common, but it is a marvelous plant. There are a lot of beautiful plants here. This is the Canomeles. This is one of the hybrids. This is a pink form. There are many Canomeles, and they too will flower in the shade. You know, all over the country we've had a lot of frost during this winter, and it's done a lot of damage. We've lost all our rosemaries the other side of the country, and here's the rosemary. This is Miss Jessup. But look, even here there's some damage, but it's in full flower. Not very often do we see a rosemary as large as this, and in a garden of this sort it can be allowed to flower in this fashion. It still can be used if you want it for flavoring. And coming round here is another Canomeles. This one is not as common as the pink forms. This is Canomeles speciosa nivalis, the white form. Look at it. There it is. You can use that on a north-facing wall or to cover a fence. Give it some little back protection, and it will do well in the shade. And then we come to this border, this garden. Well, of course, it conforms to no particular rules because it's an old garden. We've got shrubs, we've got bulbs, we've got perennial plants, herbaceous plants, and in a week or two's time, they'll be planting the bedding plants. And you know, all these plants seem to do so well. You know, there's a lot to be said for plant association. Here's Nepeta, and then we come on and we've got many other plants growing. I'd like you to look at this. You see, roses in a shrub and herbaceous border. These roses are lightly pruned. I usually prune them much harder. But when you lightly prune, you get early flowers. And here's a bud coming, and that will flower, well, before the end of the month. We talk about June roses, but if you lightly prune, especially if you're in a favoured climate district, you can get roses before the end of May. Look at the purple sage. That's an ornamental plant. Here's some of the ordinary sage growing along with it. And then further along, we've got irises. They're a little bit close together. You know, I'd like to thin those out. I usually lift mine after flowering and put the small pieces of roots back and grow them. You get much better flowers that way. But see the variety in this border. Peonies, an early single peony. And I understand this particular one seeds quite freely here. Here's a plant that I'm very fond of. This is Grocosmia. Now, it's related to the Montbretia. And I think in June, that'll be a mass of these drooping heads of beautiful red flowers. See, no pattern at all. Here are lilies, and then the daffodils are just over, and the hebes. You know, we have had a lot of damage with the hebes, and this is the only one with us that has survived. And in the background, you've got the New Zealand holly. And the New Zealand holly, that's Alaria macrodonta. That's the major form. That suffered very badly from frost. And if you've got any shrubs like that, don't be too quick to cut them down or to dig them up. They may recover. That's recovering from the bottom. Here's another one of the Alarias. This is Alaria hastii, and this one will stand up to any weather conditions. Before we go, I'd like you to look at that arch covered with a rambler rose. That's a Chapman's pink. That's a beautiful rose, and I'm sure if you were to come here in June, you'd see that a massive bloom.
What do you call this garden?
This is the library garden.
Is it open to the public? I mean,
No, this is kept for the scholars and what have you to sit and read a book if they wish in seclusion.
Well, a perfect situation, actually. Come on, I mean, you'll be sitting there all night, I know.
Yes, very nice. Well, there's an old black cat that's adopted this garden, and you'll find him any day sitting on these seats in the sun.
Well, most of the garden is quite big. Just don't rush away, because I must point that out. I mean, there are all sorts of gardens with little tiny patches, little paved areas that they've got to furnish, and I think there's lots of ideas in here for them. And that lovely broom, I can smell it here.
Yes, it's Cistus cuensis, of course. It's a nice shrub, as you say.
Are these plants here your choice, your design? I mean, who's the fella who's said this? I mean, the whole thing is lovely there.
Well, this garden was developed because at one time our greenhouse range stood here. The college was left a library of books and had to have somewhere to house them, so they built an extension. And we had to move. And we developed this garden from that site, which was the site of greenhouses and frames and what have you.
Was it goodish soil then that was there?
Oh, no soil at all. It was all paved area. Most of this soil was brought in, of course.
So you had reasonable topsoil in the beds, but everything else is pretty rough.
Yes, quite.
Because, I mean, you've got 3 trees there, haven't you, in quite a small area. Can't be any much more than what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paving slabs and about 4 foot deep.
Yes, well, the ideas came fairly close together, so we get 3 straight columns up eventually, part of the chimney, etc. So.
Yeah. Prunus Amanagawa, some people say that it's planted almost too commonly, but I don't think so. Thing, isn't it? That lovely sort of straight shape.
And it gives you a different shape, of course. Yeah. And shape in gardens is as much important as colour and what have you.
Well, I mean, this is a lovely thing too in shape, isn't it? The whole plant beautifully furnished. We could use this a lot more, don't you think?
It's a plant that died out. It was used quite in the 30s. You see quite a bit of it about, you know.
Well, they used to force it. I mean, it used to be grown in pots, didn't it, and actually sold, but you don't see it
for some unknown reason it disappeared.
Dicentra spectabilis. Do you think we can tell that horny old story yet again?
Why not?
Yeah. I heard in the north somebody call it bride in the bath, but lady in the bath is another nickname for it, because if you pull those 2 sort of bath sections back, it is supposed to be the equivalent of a lady in the bath. I think if we let the flowers drop over, and call it Dutchman's breeches. We're a bit
Which is,
near the point.
yes, yes.
It likes moist soil, doesn't it? Most of the dicentras do quite
It
well
does,
in
yes.
marsh
And of
soil.
course, you must realise that through the winter months, this is a shaded border.
Oh, I see.
This
So it
is
does get
partly
wet.
why we've chosen that for that sort of area.
Yeah. But here, I mean, it's hot this evening.
Today,
the plants
it's
seem to be
really
stinging all right. Yeah. And trees. I mean, you've got quite a lot of trees.
The trees, again, were selected for bark colour.
Yeah. I should start at the bottom. I'm so excited, really. Lots of things.
Well,
6 plants. What's that?
that's the lady's mantle.
Oh, Alchemilla. Because
Yes,
I've
that's
missed
right.
it with that frothy
Yes,
lime green
yes.
flowers. And that'll completely cover that, won't it?
That will, and you'll have these glorious heads of the lemon green again,
Yeah.
which is very nice.
And then contrast with the cherry.
Yes, this is Prunus cerula, and eventually
You have
this
to
will
touch
make
that,
a,
surely, don't you?
This
I mean,
will
that would-
eventually make a stem that size, and this will be a rich polished mahogany when all these peel off as it gets older. Very
lovely
beautiful.
tree, that, isn't it?
Yes.
And for a small garden, it's all right. I mean,
Here we should probably have to do a little bit of pruning, but not a great deal.
yeah, and you're not worried about roots in foundations or anything with small
No,
trees
because
like
it's mucky stuff in between. I don't think they'll ever get through very far.
that. Did you put much sort of compost or manure in?
Yes,
With that soil?
We put quite a bit, dug it in rough, you know,
Yeah.
at the time of planting.
Because really it's a series of rectangles or squares.
Yes, the object was to supply seats, as you see, in various parts of the garden. And we hope, if we got our sums right, that they will be partially secluded once the stuff starts to grow a bit.
I mean, yes,
So you
the
can
shrub rows.
That's right. Yes, and these Irish yews are going
Yeah.
high, isn't it?
Yeah.
And this is should
lot
make
of-
it a pleasant spot to sit and read.
A lot of ground cover plants. I mean, you
Oh,
think it's
quite,
going to be
yes.
self-sufficient
Yeah.
in time once these have all
Oh, I'm
recovered?
sure. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Always fighting that
Yes,
terrible problem of labour.
Weeds and what have you, and labour,
Yeah.
of course, is always a problem.
But there's one plant here, I think, which is, well, my favourite of all, I suppose, in spring, the Euphorbia polychroma. Grown a bit taller than we would expect to see it, but funny things are happening
Yeah,
this year, aren't they?
this may be because we've had a very wet spring as well, and things have developed very rapidly. It's a very soft sort of growth, you know. Suddenly hit us and everything's gone like that.
Because the soil looks quite light. In my own garden, heavy clay, it's grown beautifully for the last 4 or 5 years, but it would only be about half that size, more compact.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And the colours
That's
there-
more the size of mollis, isn't it? Euphorbia mollis, which is fairly high on.
Yes, it is. You split it.
Oh yes, yes. If you
one-
wish to, of course.
I would transplant that, I suppose, in October time.
Yes, yes. Or early spring,
Yeah.
after the winter's gone, you know, when it starts to break again. There's 2 times with all herbaceous plants, you know, either autumn or spring. I prefer the spring here because we do get these very hard winters. And you can see what you've got in the spring, because it's great.
Yeah.
It's a much better way.
And good autumn colour. I mean, red berries.
Very good indeed.
Yeah. And then beside that, the Iris pallida. I mean, that's another flower ranger's plant, isn't it? It was very
certainly is,
short
yes,
several years ago,
yes,
but there are good
yes,
stocks of it
yes.
about now. We'll need to divide that up after flowering, July.
Yes, traditional time to do it, of course, iris after flowering, but you can, again, split them up in the autumn or spring. Yeah, they get away with it, it's the same.
Are you going to
I mean,
leave-
I split these this spring, you see, on there.
Are you going to let the small blue flowers come, or just
Oh,
grow it
yes,
in
I
time?
think so, yeah. Yes,
Because there's a lovely mixture, isn't there? of Silver,
Oh, yeah, fine.
silver foliage there. I mean,
You
it looks
see-
like globe artichoke and...
Yeah, but well,
clear.
you've got the yellow behind it, you see, so and blues and yellows always go well together.
do they? You like to mix those?
Yeah, do you know Duke of Cambridge's garden at Kew?
No.
You don't? Well, that was done with blue borders, and it picked out with the evening primrose, just occasional, these yellows. And on a summer evening, it was out of this world. It was really ethereal, you know. It's nice.
Because here you've got, right on the corner, the Ballorley hybrid, a sort of purpley type of flower.
Yeah.
And that blue and purple is all right, is it? Or
Yes, and here again, you get the colour of the foliage. It goes red in the autumn, which gives you added colour. It's a good hardy plant, and being on the corner, it doesn't matter if it gets kicked or trod on.
Oh, I
see,
see.
there's that advantage about it.
Yeah.
Which is worth considering in any garden, of course.
Good ground cover plant.
Oh, excellent, yes.
Flower
yes,
arranging
yes,
ladies like it again because it
Yes,
fills in at
yes.
the bottom. But here, I mean, the heat of earlier today, you can see the plant suffering still, isn't it?
Well, this is very exceptional, of course, and it's come within a week of hard frosts. So this is the real problem.
Yeah, it's amazing how quick things are growing.
Yes, they're shot away.
But I think we should leave the tranquility of this, because the one garden which really caught my eye, well, not garden so much as view, is across the fish pond. You can really see the beautiful trees and the whole vista of this magnificent garden. In marked contrast to the quiet and secluded private library garden, we have the really broad walk. People coming in off the street and walking through those lovely arches, George. What a lovely sight they have, first of all.
This is quite a contrast, which is helped in some respects by this planting by the library. You notice we've filled it in with evergreens, so when you come through the arch, you've got a complete contrast.
What are those three trees, first of all?
The three on the right-hand side there, that's Cedus conica. It's a variety of Arizonica, of course, and they were planted to pick up the design, as you'll see as you look down there.
But if you've been here 33 years, you must have some idea of when they were planted and the
These were
height.
planted in 1963-ish, about that area. And you've seen they established themselves quite well.
Are you happy with them? I mean, they're going to keep going, aren't they?
Very much. The foundry at the moment is not very happy because they're blocking the view from his room.
Oh, I see.
So perhaps we shall have to shift one.
Because I mean, it's quite close to the chapel. You've got those lovely cherries in front of the chapel there.
And the cherries are Shirotti and Sarafugan.
It's two of the Japanese hybrids.
That's right, yes.
Lovely
And
colours.
very old trees, I think, by the shape of them. They must have been planted in the early 30s, probably in late 20s, because the grafting was done on the ordinary gene stock, which is not done these days.
No. And what about the chapel itself? Because that's a lovely building.
The chapel, incidentally, is a Wren building. Christopher Wren was the designer of our chapel.
Yeah.
And it's quite a handsome building, both in and out.
Well, going inside, the coloured windows look beautiful. I mean,
Yes,
one
they
can
do.
just see the shape of them now rather than
And
the colours.
incidentally, talking of the coloured window, you'll find one of them is to Harvard.
I saw that, yes.
Yes, well, he was a man of Emmanuel who went to America and founded the university there.
Yes.
That's our relationship with America.
Yeah. Coming further round and back to the present day, another sort of three-tree planting.
Well, this planting again is picking up the design of those three. We have the three Irish yews with the silver weeping pear in the centre.
Well, we often talk about the silver weeping pear and see youngish plants. How long has that one been in? It's nice to get the
About
sort of
63. These plantings were all about the same. At that time we had a lot of renovation going on in the college, and we changed the design slightly of the garden and the shape of the pond.
I see. Well, I think that's lovely, the way they stand almost like soldiers, the surrounding. As we follow the pan round, we can see the border that Arthur's with too, and the lovely copper beach. Lovely view across there.
Yes, it's a pleasant spot.
Yeah, you spoke about the pond.
Yes.
Why have we got a little heliotrope stuck here then against the water?
Heliotrope, I've planted this many years now around the pond, hoping that people would notice it, but nobody ever has. There's an ancient legend about heliotrope. Apparently it goes that there once lived a water nymph by the side of a pool. And as she grew up, she took interest in the sun god as he drove his chariot across the heavens, and eventually fell in love, like these young ladies do, and eventually died of unrequited love, which was a tragedy, of course. And where she died, the heliotrope sprung up. And even today, if you look at the heliotrope, it turns its head to the sun and follows it across the heavens.
Oh, what a lovely story. All those people bedding out with heliotrope.
That's where you get its name. The name heliotrope is derived from Helios, the sun, and tropium, to follow the sun.
Yeah.
So it's another little tale that makes gardening interesting.
Lovely, yeah. But there must be many trails here. I mean, the pond, has it been here as long as the college?
Yes, the pond, we think, was originally a fish pond, and it had parallel sides, obviously an artificial one. When we did this arrangement here, we broke the sides in, as you see, so we got a better shape.
Oh, beautiful shape.
Made it more ornamental.
Yeah.
Using contrast foliage again in height, shape.
Yeah.
You've got this spear shape here, you see, and a big piece in the middle. And these peltaphyllums that are in flower at the side will have the big round shield shape leaf. So you get a contrast of shape besides colour. That all adds to it.
And beautiful reflection, because it's trees. I mean, as we stand here, those lovely trees. What's the line? I mean, the leaves are opening, but I can't quite pick it out from here.
That's Tilia tomentosa, the silverleaf lime. And here again, a summer day is best seen. If you've got a slight wind, it turns the leaves upwards, and you get this glorious silver underside showing out.
And it shimmers in the wind, almost like water moving, doesn't it? Yeah.
Reminds you a bit of tremulous, the poplar, you know, you've got that sort of shaky if you get a little bit of wind.
Moving. Yeah. And the lovely deep pink Kanzan, I mean, Cambridge is alive with those, isn't it?
Yeah. A tree much maligned, much overplanted, of course, but quite good.
And further on, that one last big lime. So it is lime, isn't it?
Yes, it is lime. That's the weeping lime, silverleaf lime. It's the same silver, Tilia petiolaris. To my mind, a tree that's not planted enough.
No.
Both in shape, and looks and smell.
A lovely place to stand here and look and compare the two.
Glorious, yes. Of course, the tree here on the island is a swamp cypress, which is one of these days will fill the whole island, of course.
So much to see. And all free to the public. I mean, they can come in any time they like.
Oh, most certainly. And of course, we don't insist that they walk to the paths. They can walk on the grass as well.
What, go anywhere? Almost treat it like home?
Yes, quite.
But they seem to respect the place. I mean, no litter or anything about it,
They certainly do. We get no problems of rubbish or things like that, fortunately.
Fantastic. And I was speaking to one of the chaps working in the building there. He says almost like a hotel with all those undergrads coming and going, and he said he lives in a flat 6 floors up, and it's nice to come here in the evening, even though he's been working all day, and just sit in the garden.
Well, this is what gardens are for, after all said and done. We hope that people use them and find perhaps peace of mind and perhaps the wisdom of the earth, who knows.
Lovely. And I hope we can come back. We'd like to come back
certainly
next week, so we look forward to seeing you then. I hope you can join us. We have Bob Hopkins looking at bedding plants, Phil Swindle in the water garden, and some more of these lovely views of beautiful trees. See you then. Good night to you.
Next week marks the return of the Chelsea Flower Show, which is the subject of 2 programmes on BBC Two, when on Sunday Peter Seabrook attempts to discover what makes the atmosphere of this particular riot of blooms and blossoms so different from any other. Growing for Gold is on Sunday at 8:05. And on Wednesday at 9:45, Joan Leeming joins